welcome to More to Space than Air with Ayode Adefejideomole. Today I have with me Sahba El Shawa, who is a Jordanian Canadian interdisciplinary researcher and social entrepreneur originally from Palestine. She is the founder of the Jordan Space Research Initiative, JSRI, which aims to bridge sustainable development with space exploration and establish an analog research facility in Jordan. Sahba holds several roles in the Space Generation Advisory Council, including National Point of Contact for Jordan, as well as co-lead of the Ethics and Human Rights Project Group and the Space for Climate Action Policy Division. She's also a national coordinator in the Moon Village Association and its participation of Emerging Space Countries program. She holds a BSc in Mechanical Engineering from the University of British Columbia and an MSc in Space Studies from the International Space University, and is currently pursuing a PhD in Sustainable Development and Climate Change at IUSS Pavia in Italy. Our PhD research centers around the neuropsychological basis of the overview effect and how making it more accessible using virtual reality can help drive sustainable behavior on Earth. During her studies, she collaborated with the German Aerospace Center on robotics research and completed an internship at the European Space Agency's Clean Space Initiative, focusing on the environmental impact of space activities. Sahba is a vocal advocate for decoupling defense and space. She is committed to creating opportunities for underrepresented communities and helping guide the industry towards a more equitable, ethical, and sustainable future. It's so nice to have you with me today, Sahba. Thank you so much for making time out to speak with me.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very happy to participate.
Awesome. So I am just gonna ask you to introduce yourself further and share with us any interesting thing about you that you feel led to share at this time.
Sure. So I think that was a pretty comprehensive introduction. I would say one of the main things I am focused on in the space industry is sustainability and accessibility. But also you touched upon briefly the idea of decoupling defense and space. So I'm very much anti-militarization, and I think that comes up often in my work, especially working on ethics and human rights, how the space industry contributes to, oppressions around the world through our so-called defense activities. But also our impact on the environment in terms of the sustainability. So, as you saw, my background was quite technical. I did engineering. I worked on robotics research, and my goal was always, I want to send, a robot to the moon or Mars, like work on a rover. And as I started doing my master's degree at the International Space University, it was pretty interdisciplinary. So I got to learn about more than just the technical side of space. And as I was doing my internship at the European Space Agency, focusing on sustainability, environmental impact, my priorities in the space industry started to shift. I think this was also accelerated through the Space Generation Advisory Council, working with the Ethics and Human Rights Group, realizing how much colonialism has left an impact on the space industry and continues to be propagated through space exploration. And so it took me a very long time to actually get into the space industry, really over around 10 years, till I got my first actual space job. And then when I was working on it really clashed with kind of my moral beliefs, the things that I think we should be improving in the space industry. And so that's why I decided to do my PhD in Sustainable Development and Climate Change. It's also an interdisciplinary PhD working on basically how we can change people's behavior and the way that they see themselves in relation to nature, because I believe that the climate crisis the space debris problem, all of these issues where humans have a negative impact on the environment, they stem from ideology and not technology. So we can talk about technology all we want. We can say, there's carbon capture technologies, they're going to save the world. But actually, unless we change our behaviors, those technologies will only enable us to continue destroying the environment. And so that's currently my main focus. And I try to do that, through my PhD research, through my work with JSRI, or the Jordan Space Research Initiative, and of course through volunteering in various space NGOs.
Thank you so much for that. Can you tell us more about your role in the industry and how relevant it is for advancing space science?
I would say that currently my role as the founder and executive director of the Jordan Space Research Initiative is what applies the most to advancing space technology and science. And our goal at JSRI is bridging sustainable development with space exploration. So this is something that I found was kind of lacking in the space industry, because often when we talk about the benefits of space for life on Earth, we're talking about Earth observation satellites and the data that we get and how that helps us monitor the climate, which is really an amazing thing, and it has changed the way that we understand the Earth system. But when it comes to countries like Jordan, emerging space countries that don't have a space program or a space agency, you really need to show that there are more direct benefits that they also have access to, because they don't have that many natural resources or financial resources. And so this kind of started for me through my master's at the International Space University. My thesis focused on how Jordan can implement the United Nations Space 2030 agenda, which is basically using space for sustainable development, for social development as well. And through that, I identified specific sustainable development goals that are high priority in Jordan. So either things that are challenges that we're currently facing, like water resource management, or things that are strengths with relation to the Jordanian economy. So for example, there's a lot of investment into renewable energy. And these things, in Jordan at least, are not being applied to space. So we also want to kind of bridge the gap between companies that are doing really great research and technology development and science, but they haven't broken into the space industry because we don't have this space ecosystem in Jordan. So it's seen as something really far-fetched, or only the rich countries can do this. And that's a huge part of the reason why we also chose analog research as the focus, because we're showing that space research can happen on Earth, right? You don't need to send something to space or spend millions of dollars developing a payload. You can also start in the desert in Jordan, testing these technologies, the different scientific experiments, and also to foster more collaboration internationally and within our region. And so I would say that's been the main focus of kind of the technology and science development that we're aiming to do in Jordan. And this year we're actually doing our first analog mission. So we're focusing on research areas like women's health, robotics, biomedical, wearable technologies, things that are easy to move around, you could say. So, you don't need to build an entire facility to be able to test these things. But in the meantime, you can use the existing infrastructure in your country, looking at your national priorities and seeing how you can apply space research to your country's benefit as well. So that's what we're aiming to do in Jordan.
So, okay, so I was going to follow up on development of the mind and preparation for taking on active roles within the space industry. And I wanted to first touch on volunteering and internship. How important do you think it is for young professionals to take on volunteering positions and internships?
So I would say that for me, that was really important. First of all, because, as I said, we don't have a space industry in Jordan. I started getting involved in this capacity through the space NGOs, so volunteering with the Space Generation Advisory Council, and the Moon Village Association, because that gives you access to a network of people who have the same interests. Some of them come from countries that have space programs and others don't. And so you can find ways to support each other and learn from each other in that sense. But then, of course, on the internship side, I would say that I was able to intern at the European Space Agency because I was a Canadian citizen. So if this was, a few years ago when I only had my Jordanian passport, I would not have access to these same opportunities. So I don't want to say that it's absolutely necessary for someone to do an internship, at a space agency or anything like that. Of course, that does help a lot. But it's not the only way to get experience, because through volunteering, through even now a lot of commercial companies, because they have less strict security requirements, unless they're in the US, you can still be involved as an international student, even during your studies, or as a young professional. So, you don't have to get a full-time job in the space industry right after graduating to start contributing to your future space career. And so I think it's a really good way to start by volunteering.
For young professionals looking to develop competency, maybe those considering following in your footprints in social change development and advancing the SDGs, how can they develop competencies?
Mm-hmm. So this is actually an area that I find isn't as heavily researched in the space industry. We are starting to see that change a bit more. But personally, most of the experience I got in this area was through my thesis project, for example, doing independent research, or through my volunteer work with the Space Generation Advisory Council. So it is very often that you see the younger generations, people who are volunteering their time, are much more passionate about sustainability and social issues. And I would say really finding a way to bridge that into your ongoing work. So even if you're doing technology development, think about, how is this technology going to be used? Are there good uses? Are there bad uses? Can we try to, look at it from an ethical perspective? I think this is especially important for us in the space industry because, so like I said, even when I finally got my first job in the space industry, I was working in a technical role. I was doing system assembly, integration, and testing for satellites. And a lot of the projects that we were working on were not necessarily for uses that align with my values. And that is very common in the space industry, because if you think of, defense and military technologies, which unfortunately are usually driving what we're doing in the space industry because that's where the funding is coming from, you really need to step back and think, is this something I want to contribute to? Is this something maybe I can help change by, even just starting a conversation about what are the implications of the technology that we're working on? Can it be used to help people or help the environment instead of, for military applications? And this is really a big topic to tackle in the space industry. So the more people start talking about it, the more they can start changing this mindset. So really, I think a lot of it is just coming from, your internal views and what you care about. So if you have an issue that you're really passionate about and you think that your technical work can apply, it probably does. And so you just need to bridge that gap.
Amazing. Okay. My follow-up question to you on that would be, from your own view, what were the challenges that you encountered coming into the industry, and how can young professionals overcome these challenges when they see them?
Mm-hmm. I think the biggest challenge for me was really just being able to get into the industry. So when I was living still in the Middle East, studying in Jordan, there was absolutely zero opportunities at the time to get involved in space directly. There university that you could study and hope to someday get involved in the space industry. And I think this is the case for a lot of people. When I was only able to start really contributing to space projects when I immigrated to Canada. But before that, I was always reading about space. I remember I was studying mechatronics engineering at the time, but I would spend a lot of my time in the library just like looking through aerospace engineering books and thinking, what could I potentially do in the future? And just having that goal, even if it's not available to you right now, also allows you to be on the lookout for opportunities that may allow you to reach that goal in the future. And personally for me, I wanted, after I started having access to these opportunities, one of my biggest goals then became, how do I bring these opportunities back to people? I know that, I'm not the first Jordanian to be interested in space, and I won't be the last, but how can I help create opportunities for these people as well? And so my biggest advice would be, if you're facing challenges in accessibility, probably you're not the only person facing those challenges. So really work on making a community, start your own initiative, start a project group, or start working on something independently, and try to find those people who have similar interests, who are facing the same barriers, because you can support each other, and then you can help make it easier for the people who come after you, who have the same interests and want to get involved in your work.
Thank you so much. That was beautifully put. Do you have any concluding remarks?
So I would say really volunteering your time to, develop your skills, to find these opportunities that there are not that many of them, but there are if you're looking. So, look at the Space Generation Advisory Council or the Moon Village Association as a way to get into the network. And then also, if you're from an emerging space country, or if your country doesn't have a space program, but you're interested in this, really try to find organizations that are in the same position. Because for us in Jordan, yes, we want to provide opportunities for Jordanians and to build the industry in Jordan, but we also want to work with other emerging space countries, and we want to help them develop and learn from each other and support each other. And so if that's something that you would like to work on in your country, I would say just start it, because if, you're either going to do it now or you're going to do it later. If I had realized 10 years ago that it was an option for me to just start doing space stuff, that you don't actually need to have a master's degree in space studies or to have all these experiences. Of course, they help in terms of the network that you develop. But at the same time, if you already have this interest, if you have the knowledge, if you're looking to learn and collaborate with other people, I think the best advice I would have is to just do it. Just get started. Because whether you do it now or 10 years from now, it's going to take time to set up. And so the earlier you start, the better it is, not just for you, but also for the people in your country who want to, collaborate with you and work with you. And I'm sure that they exist out there. So but if you're interested in starting something space related in your country, whether you do it now or 10 years from now, it's going to have an impact. And so you might as well get started and learn along the way and find those people who have the same interests, because I guarantee that they're there to support you and to learn from you as well.
Thank you so much for that, Sahba. If people want to connect with you, how can they do that?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. I also have a personal website, sahba.space. You can check out the JSRI pages. You can see here the the tag for Instagram and Facebook. We're on LinkedIn. We also have a website, JSRI.space. So we're more than happy to connect with anyone who's looking to collaborate. And I look forward to reaching more people as well.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you for taking time out to speak with me. Thank you so much for speaking with me. And to the larger audience members that are watching this, from us at Multispace and Air, we wish you an amazing future, and just see you at Beyond the Stars.
Thank you so much. Thanks again for the opportunity.
Oh